Hello, everybody. I don't know if I'm going to have another broadcast tonight, so I'm kind of pre-recording something. I'm actually late to go see some friends on the other side of town. I did want to bring up a couple topics that were kind of amusing to me. One of them was this article by David Frum, who is an idiot of tremendous proportions, a guy who owes his entire career to coining the term axis of evil under President Bush, and then he left the Bush administration. He remained one of the strongest neocons in the media, I guess. And he writes this whole article where he's defending another moron, Washington Post columnist Jennifer Rubin, who was being attacked by the National Review for literally being contrarian to everything Donald Trump does. Now, let me pull up something, and I'll it's pretty much. I don't know why he didn't mention that, but she he did. She said, for example, she used to be one of the biggest climate skeptics. Let me mute this so it doesn't crop up. But here's just a part of that article, the original article from National Review. It says, as Trump is indeed a tyrant, he is a tyrant of the mind, and how potent is the control he exerts over Rubens. That's a great way of putting it. So sharp and so sudden are her reversals as to make effective parity impossible. When President Obama agreed to the Paris Climate Accord, Rubin left her readers under no illusions as to the scale of her disapproval. The deal she proposed was ephemeral, a piece of paper, a group wish, a nonsense that would achieve nothing. That the U.S. had been made a party to a covenant so devoid of substance, she added, illustrated the fantasy world in which the Obama administration lived and was reflective of Obama's preference for phony accomplishments. His tendency to phony accomplishments is her words. His tendency to distract and his base's craven willingness to eat up any bill of goods that they were served. At least it did until President Trump took America out of it, at which point adhering to the position she had theretofore held became a census act, a political act, a dog whistle to the far right, and a snub to the elites that had been calibrated to please the climate change denial right-wing base that revels in scientific illiteracy, a base that presumably enjoyed Rubin's blog until January 20th, 2017. To abandon the ephemeral piece of paper Rubin submitted would materially damage our credibility and our persuasiveness and present conduct unbecoming of the leader of the free world. So David Frum wrote an article in response to that called Conservatism Can't Survive Donald Trump Intact. And he goes through this long complaint list about people who used to be anti-Trump Republicans who have since realized that they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And he thinks that, well, those people, they've lost all principle. They've kind of swam away and abandoned their principles. But then at the end, he says, the most revealing thought in Cook's essay is the one that I just read from National Review, is his explanation for why he feels it is safe to go with the Trumpian flow. Conservatism in this country long predated Trump. For now, it is tied up with Trump. Soon it will have survived Trump. This is something many conservatives tell themselves, but it's not even slightly true. Trump is changing conservatism into something different. We can all observe that. Will it snap backwards afterward? You can believe this only if you imagine that ideologies exist independently of the human beings who espouse them, and they can continue unchanged and unchanging despite the flux of their adherents. In this view, millions of American conservatives may build their political identities on enthusiastic support for Donald Trump, but American conservatism will continue humming in the background as if none of those human commitments mattered at all. This is simply not true. Ideas are artificial. So here this is a very strange thing. He's complaining until now about conservatives changing, and then look what he says here. Ideas are not artifacts, especially the kind of collective ideas we know as ideologies. Conservatives in 1964 opposed civil rights laws. Not true. Conservatives in 1974 opposed tax cuts unless paid for by spending cuts. Conservatives in 1984 opposed same-sex marriage. Conservatives in 1994 opposed trade protectionism. Conservatives in 2004 opposed people who equated the FBI and Soviet Union's KGB. All those statements of conservative ideology have gone by the boards, and one could easily write a similar list of amended views for liberals. Conservatism is what conservatives think, say, and do. As conservatives change as much through the harsh fact of death and birth as by the fluctuations of opinion, so does that what it means to be a conservative. The Trump presidency is a huge political. So anyway, well, I'll read this last paragraph. Donald Trump may not be the leader of American conservatives, but he is the most spectacular and vulnerable asset. The project of defending him against his coming political travails, or at least of assailing who doubt and oppose him, is already changing what it means to be a conservative. The word conservative will, of course, continue in use, but its meaning is being rewritten each day by the actions of those who lay claim to the word. It is their commitment to Trump that etches Trumpism into them, and while Trump may indeed pass, that self-etching will not soon be effaced. And then earlier, you know, he goes into this whole thing where he's like, they sense, he's talking about the people who doubt the Mueller investigation. He says they sense, as we all sense, that in fact, so many theirs lurk beneath Trump's White House that even the most maladroit digger is liable to find something terrible. If not collusion with Russia, then perhaps tax evasion. If not tax evasion, then maybe bank fraud. If not bank fraud, then sexual assault, or all of them. Look, all of those things that he's listing are not provable in court without, a tremendous amount of, basically, the Russia thing was the strongest thing that they had, and it was still pretty weak, and it's falling apart as we're all the time. And the fact that they went for broke so hard on it is really a testament to how pathetic the anti-Trump Republican and Democrats case is. That they would concoct this nonsense that they can't prove. There's been no definitive proof told. Basically, it's unraveling day by day. It's spawning more investigations into the conduct of Democrats, into the conduct of the FBI, into stuff like that, than it is into Trump. How many indictments are there of Trump associates? Well, there are 3, but they're 3 very weak indictments. And I think you could see, don't hold me to this, you could see that the guilty plea, the Flynn guilty plea, could be withdrawn at some point. So these anti-Trump fanatics like David Frum, who is a Bush-appointed moron who has no accomplishments to his name, they have to be feeling the pressure now, because all of the actual policy positions they don't actually list. He doesn't list any of the accomplishments he's had, destroying ISIS in Syria and in Iraq. He's passed that tax bill. He's basically defanged Obamacare. He's gone and reduced a lot of federal regulation. He's appointed Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court, which now seems like a small thing, but there's a roaring economy. David Frum doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. These are people that thought that Trump would crash the car, and he didn't do it. Now they have to come up with all sorts of bullshit just to justify their increasingly ridiculous position that, oh, they're not the real conservatives. They're people that lost their principles. You never had any principles to begin with. All your principles are they're about funding the military-industrial complex and telling people it's okay for the NSA to spy on you. So that's it for that part. One other story, it's burning up the internet. It says Justice Democrats confirms Cenk Uygur's resignation. This is that story that broke, I think, a day or 2 ago about Cenk Uygur losing a lot of support because of some sexist comments he said way back in the day. It says the Justice Democrats has confirmed that Cenk Uygur and Dave Collar stepped aside from their organization after revelations of the Young Turks' history of racist, sexist, and pro-rape sentiments, and the popular progressives subsequent pseudo-apology in which he blamed the fact that he was a Republican when some of the comments were made. So he made a couple retarded statements, I guess, back before he was a progressive, like that women are genetically deformed and that they should they should put out more or something. It says Uygur was 30 at the time of the post, which included referring to Native Americans as quote unquote redskins who are always looking to make a buck, stating that Japanese women will sleep with American men for a new purse. I didn't see that one before. And stating that women are genetically flawed and poorly designed creatures who do not want to have sex nearly as often as needed for the human race to get along peacefully and fruitfully. Uygur then went to the Kevin Spacey route with his apology, stating that he is now living as a liberal man and blamed his disgusting statements on being a conservative at the time. So who wrote this, by the way? Oh, Cassandra Fairbanks. Yeah, I like some of her stuff. If someone said that today, I would heavily criticize them on the show, and rightfully so, and I have. I've criticized myself over the years. I had not yet matured, and I was still a conservative who thought that stuff was politically incorrect and edgy. When you read it now, it looks really honestly ugly, and it's very uncomfortable to read. The Gateway Pundit also reported on a post by Young Turks co-founder and senior vice president of operations, Dave Collar, in 2005, in which he describes himself in Uyghur asking 14 to 16-year-old girls if they have ever had sex, and referring to them as whores in training and little spoiled brat bitch young American girls on their way to becoming abused porn actresses or dispensable property in a New York City prostitution ring. He did, however, admit that the trip did in fact take place. Collar is currently the head of human resources at the Young Turks. Wow. Meaning that anyone who experienced sexism or other issues in the workplace would have to report it to this man who referred to children as future prostitutes. When the Rap called Collar for comment, he declined. I don't want to talk about any of that stuff. Thank you for calling, he said before hanging up on the reporter. So these are people. Now, would I fire somebody over saying stuff like that? I would not. I'm also not the management type, and I've never had to fire anybody. I guess I technically didn't have firing privileges, but it was a pretty odd story. And in any case, why is this such a big deal? Well, these are the people that are always calling for people to be fired for saying this exact type of stuff. And now they're saying, well, this happened in our past lives when we were conservatives. Now we're progressives. Now we're liberals. Now we believe in women's rights and the freedom of choice and whatever, the right to choose, I guess, and all that. And we're feminists and whatever. Well, no, under your own standards, where you basically put people through the fucking Spanish Inquisition for literally any sort of questionable statement, and you have Anita Sarkeesian, this idiot, come on and critique gamers. No, you should go fuck yourselves, Young Turks. And I think that their brand is going to suffer a lot of wear and tear over the next couple months. And there was already this stuff that hasn't been really reported widely because not a lot of people really follow this guy. But Jordan Sheridan, their reporter who got fired recently for a lot of his own alleged sexual assaults, that's just going to add to the pile. It's just a bad situation for them over there. So that's it. Maybe we'll talk later again. I'll put some more stuff. I'm trying to relax a little over this weekend. It's been a very rough week and a half for me, but I gotta keep doing this because this is kind of the way that I get to blow off my steam. I get to kind of take out my frustration by laughing at ridiculous ridiculous statements from both the right and the left in this case. So good night, and have a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, I guess, for those of you that celebrate it. And we'll speak later, possibly tonight or tomorrow.